Welcome to the EchoCast, episode 154, Delayfield 2021. I am Morgan, aka Bond Diesel, and this is a podcast about gaming news, all gaming platforms, and technology in general from the perspective of a lifelong nerd and now dad gamer. Please take a moment to subscribe to and rate the podcast on whatever platform you listen to it on. Comments, likes, and subs on the YouTube video, retweets on Twitter, and the iTunes reviews are the most helpful. Please do them right now. Do it right now. Do it now. Do things. Say things. Okay. Also, be sure to let me know if you have any questions or topics for the next show by replying to Twitter in the YouTube comments or by becoming a patron. Thank you to this month's patrons, Hassan, Christian, Darren, Tim, PK, Man-Made Golf, and Dale. If you would like to support this podcast and my other content, please check out patreon.com/BondDiesel. I point this out because I'm not on Twitch anymore, so I'm not taking subs. So if you were a sub recently or before I stopped being on Twitch, Patreon's really probably the better place. And honestly, the more people I get on there, the more active I'm going to be on there. Because I'm basically I'm just on YouTube for videos, podcasts, and streams. It's actually kind of nice. So if you used to support on Twitch, go ahead and check out that Patreon until I can get partnered on YouTube, which may take a little bit. It may take Division 2 and Heartland, but we'll talk about that. This episode, we are going to talk about Battlefield delayed, new PS5 model, Age of Empires 4 stress test, a Division ETF rumor, listener questions, content updates, and more. Okay, so we're going to jump in right with the Battlefield 2042 delay. So it has been delayed until November 19th. Both Zeka and Master Prime on Twitter had both kind of mentioned this story and wanted me to talk about it. I plan to anyway, so here it is. So November 19th, they kind of did the general COVID, life, world issues kind of thing. This is only a few weeks of a delay. It's not, like 6 months or something like that. So it's kind of hard to know exactly what a delay that is relatively that short it is really for, but probably some polish is my guess. From getting to talk to people who make games and so on, I don't think people realize, and we'll talk about this a bit later, but I don't think people realize that like a game like the First Division had like years of pre-production, but only like a couple of years of development. Like, the impression I'm under is that basically a lot of writing and research happens, and then all of that information gets pumped to the people who make the worlds and make the characters and animate and do all those things. And then they just kind of get rushed to finish the game, or what ends up being the game that we see. And so a few weeks may not seem like that big of a deal, and it may not lead to brand new mechanics and things like that, but a lot of bugs and that kind of thing is probably what's going to get worked out in those last couple of weeks. And if they still do the beta, here, I think it's here coming up in a week or two, it will just give them even a little bit longer to implement some of that feedback that they're going to get. So I don't really care. It's not that big of a deal. At this point, I think for at least the next 2 years, people need to just be okay with delays, because what's funny is people almost got a weird impression when COVID started. A lot of games still came out pretty close to their release dates, and I think people were like, oh, okay, hey, it's not going to affect anything. But what people don't realize, that if a project was 95% done, they were still able to finish it relatively quickly and then get it out close to on time, if not on time. The problem is all the games and stuff that were like 50% done or not even that much when the pandemic started. Those are the games that we've seen go from this year to next year, and that we'll probably see games that were meant for 2022 go to 2023. Really good examples would be games like Ubisoft, the game that Massive is working on, the Star Wars game. I imagine that game, around the time of, I mean, they may still be in pre-production now. I don't actually know. I'm under the impression it is currently under development, like active, like development. So that means that when COVID started, they were probably literally starting active development, which means that that's probably going to delay that game for a year or two. Maybe, I don't know. So this delay of Battlefield, it's not that big of a deal to me. There's things to play, and I'm replaying Mass Effect again, which I'll talk about. So I'm good. Obviously, some people freak out, but I mean, delays are just going to be the lay of the land for quite a while. And at the end of the day, like when you have a game get delayed, like Cyberpunk and like Anthem and stuff, when games like that get delayed and then still come out bad, that sucks, and that's why people get so anxious about these games getting delayed, because they delayed games and they still weren't finished, because then that leads people to think like, oh my god, like, if this is what you delayed for, what was this game like before the delay? Like, what would it have been like if you released on time? An example that's probably familiar to a lot of people who listen to this podcast is Division 1. Division 1 got delayed for, what was it, 3 or 4 months? And it came out and it was very janky. It was cool and it was still fun, but it had some significant issues, like people being able to use ladders to glitch above the city and fly around. So like, if that was with 3 or 4 months of delay, whoa, what do you think that game was like before? So that's why people are worried about these delays, like, oh god, like what's going on? But then you have other games that have kind of bucked that trend as well. A big example coming up that now Battlefield's gonna be closer to is Halo. They're going to be putting themselves closer to that assumed, what is it, December or whatever day. And Halo Infinite was delayed a year. It was delayed to, instead of being a launch title for this new system where Microsoft is trying to catch up to Sony, it got delayed. Their biggest franchise still, I'm sure, delayed for a year because it was looking kind of rough when they showed it. And so, like, talk about a game that better show up, talk about a game that, and they're already saying that, there's multiple features that aren't going to be available at launch, which honestly is, I don't care about the features that won't be there, but there's people who do care. So this Battlefield delay is, the issue with it is that people have such a bad taste in their mouth from delays that still release bad games. And if you're a Battlefield fan, you know that the history of Battlefield isn't great with the release date of their games. So, we'll have to see what that's all about. I'm still excited about the game. I can't wait to play it. And I am excited to check out the beta. I don't know if I can pre-order that game. I'm honestly, this is the first Battlefield game I haven't pre-ordered, which meant that, yes, I did pre-order Battlefield 1 and 5. I wish I wouldn't have, because I played them both a little bit, but probably not enough to justify buying them. But yeah, so we'll see about 2042. The next story, which kind of turned into a non-story, was the new PlayStation 5 model. So there's I believe it's a disc model that got revisioned. I assume both of the digital and the disc are both having these same changes, where they deleted, it's almost like 50% of the cooler that's inside for the GPU and the CPU components. And it used to be mostly copper, and now it's a lot of aluminum and other materials now. So basically, it's way cheaper. It's if you looked at the old PlayStation cooler, it was huge, and two, it was like all copper. Which, if you know the price of copper and how much that has exploded in general, but especially during COVID, I mean, made that system, well, it made it non-profitable, and so now they're saying this revised console is profitable. They make money on it now, and so there were some videos made. I think Austin Evans made a video where he was like concerned about it running hotter, and therefore either short-term or especially long-term being worse for the console, that your components may wear out faster and things like that. So Digital Foundry and Gamers Nexus, checked it out, and they dove into it. And the overall opinion is that it basically seems like it does run a bit hotter, but to a negligible amount. It sounded like, from when I watched the video, it was so negligible that like the first system, in theory, there's basically a 100 RPM waiver in how fast the fans can come that cool the systems, and in theory, a new system with a normally functioning fan will perform no differently than the original systems with one that is under 100 RPM, which is fine. It's not hurting anything, because that's just how they make these fans. These cooling fans for computers and stuff aren't like perfect. At least, consumer grade ones aren't. And so they basically sound. Now, I still suspect from the numbers I saw that I'm sure if you take these two systems and run them 24/7 for 10 years, you're probably going to see more degradation in the newer ones. But it doesn't matter, man. I wouldn't be surprised. We'll probably find out that Xbox will do some kind of revisions on their Series X at some point. If they are able. See, the big difference is that PlayStation 5 cooler, the original consoles, was way over engineered. It was too much. That's why they were able to cut it down so much, is because it was just too good. Like it was too good for what they needed from it. And what people need to realize is that when they design these systems, they don't design each component knowing exactly the other components, right? So, both of these new systems have not proprietary, but they have. Well, I mean, I guess it sort of is proprietary. Their CPUs and GPU setups are just for them. So, those are being developed as they're developing the rest of the system. And so when they basically, it sounds like PlayStation over-engineered this cooler, and then after they put out millions of systems to people and track the stats from all of those machines, and they probably saw that the cooling fan and the cooler is only running at like 50% or less potentially, which means that they could make the cooler less expensive, and it may work a little harder, but at the end of the day, the consumer will not be affected at all. So that turned into that's a big console war story. It's good that there's people who know what they're talking about to look into that and make sure it is an issue. But most of the fire behind that was people, clickbaiting and being weird about, console war shit. So long story short, it seems like it's not a big deal. I am interested in getting a PlayStation 5. Probably gonna wait for like a slim model. That hunk of plastic and metal that they're selling right now is not appealing to me, so I'm probably gonna wait a couple of years, and then they'll have a bunch more games out, and it'll be cool to have both. And my Series X will get replaced by the Series X Plus or whatever it is. It's too big now. I don't have room in my setup. I would not be able to put it anywhere. Series X is so small, it's actually sitting on top of my subwoofer. So it's got like a bunch of room around it. And the subwoofer is turned way down. It doesn't bump it, I promise. And I don't use discs. I haven't used the disc since 360. So I'm not worried about that. So yeah, PlayStation 5 non-story. It shouldn't be a big deal. And if you can find one, you should be fine to buy it. For my Division fans, there are some rumors going around about an ETF in early 2022. The speculation is that that's suggesting that the new content won't come out until early 2022. I'm pretty skeptical. I tend to have my kind of finger on the pulse of what's going on with this kind of stuff. I've not heard this from anyone that I typically talk to, or anyone else in the community who I talk to who gets invited to these type of things. I actually don't even know who's saying that this is happening. This is kind of a third hand rumor I've heard. What I'll say is that when it's come to NDAs and supposed ETFs and content creators getting early access to content, there's been some small creators trying to make a name in what's kind of a small community, so it's kind of weird, by just straight lying about stuff. So this very well may be true. Maybe I'm not as well connected as I thought I was. As of right now, I don't think they're going to do an ETF for what they're doing for the Division 2 content. I think this maybe comes from people still thinking or hoping that this is going to be some big PvP balance. But Yannick pretty much nipped that in the bud, a few weeks ago when he said that like we're going to balance a bunch of stuff and fix some bugs that should improve the PvP experience. But it's not like they're not adding a bunch of PvP content. It's I'm still being very serious about telling people that we need to be very people. And I know this sounds like top out, like, oh, Bond's covering for Massive once again. Y'all's expectations need to be low. And I'm not saying that what they're working on is going to be bad. It's probably going to be great. It's probably going to be really cool. But it's not going to make everyone happy. I definitely am not expecting it to make PvP people happy, if that's possible. And I don't really think it's probably, if it's the kind of stuff I think it's going to be, I think it's just going to make people happy who are like still playing today. And then people like me who, if there's new content, we'll come back and play until there's no new content left, and then we're gone again. And that's not because we're not big fans. Like, I challenge someone to pretend like I'm not a big fan of the game or the IP. I'm just so tired of doing the same thing over and over again. And I'll talk about that again in the listener questions section. So maybe there's an ETF. Maybe they are, but the problem is that if this isn't going to be some big PvP patch, in my opinion, they have plenty of people that they can contact to get opinions and bounce ideas off of, and who have active NDAs with them, that they wouldn't have to invite some like small content creators and show them stuff, and small content creators who are breaking their NDAs. Like, that's what happened. Is I think it was during was it Warlords? There was some content creator who like made a video showing this blatantly fake NDA email where it's like, hey, you're gonna get access to content on this day early, and then I believe the content actually ended up that Warlords dropped before that. So it was clearly like a fake email. They just lied, and they pulled the whole like, well, this isn't mine, this is my friend. And it's obvious, yeah, you typed up on Word and you copied an Ubisoft logo off of Google, and then you tried to make everyone like you got your 600 views on your video. So it just feels like that again. But I could be wrong. I mean, I'm not gonna act like I'm not invited to an ETF. I guess if I was, I wouldn't be able to say it anyways. But yeah, be skeptical. I'm basically always going to say that. I say that. I think that in general in life, but especially with Division 2 rumors. Unfortunately, I think that it could be people kind of taking advantage of the impatience and the just the desire for any information that a lot of fans of the franchise are looking for right now that we aren't getting. And it's cool. I mean, I get it. They can only say what they're allowed to say, but I think that at some point, people's willingness to be excited about nothing is going to get old, and if it goes too long, even people like me who will be basically excited for anything the division puts out, are even going to be like, I don't really care anymore. I mean, maybe I'll check it out. And I'm not that far away from feeling like that, if I have to be totally honest. There's a very real chance that I won't really care about a Division content drop until the movie and until Division 3, which, if you've seen me talking about it on Reddit or on Twitter, is I don't believe we'll see a Division 3 until 2026 or 7 at the earliest, if they ever make one. So there we go. We'll move on. My last bit here is talking about, well, second to last, is Age of Empires 4 is doing a stress test this weekend. I'm recording this on Saturday. I played it, and it's not NDA, so I can talk about it. I played one round, and I played a co-op round with two other dudes or people. I don't know what they were, and against AI, because I'm not about that competitive Age of Empires life. I like to build my big castles, my little communities, and fight off stupid AI. And it was, so if you've heard me talk about Age of Empires 4, I'm very skeptical of this game. I didn't care for the visual. I looked, the footage they've shown looks rough. It's really cartoony, and I didn't really like the way it looked, and I was really worried about it. I didn't really like Age of Empires 3. It felt, they went to, I just didn't like the way it looked. I didn't really like the way it felt. And I love like the definitive edition and the remasters they've done of AoE 2. Age of Empires 2 is probably my most played game ever. That's more than the Division and more than like NCAA football. These other games I've played a lot, and Battlefield and all those. So I played Age of Empires 4. I've only played one round, full disclosure, and it feels really good. It's really cool. It feels like Age of Empires 2. It feels like, and it looks a lot better than I thought it was going to. It's not as cartoony as I thought. They still need to figure out the zoom thing, man. You can only zoom your camera out not that much, and you just feel like you, and I have like, 28-inch monitor. I'm running at 1440p. It performed really well. I did just upgrade my PC, which I'll talk about, so that probably helped. But I'm actually really into it. I'm actually excited for it. I wasn't before. I was probably not even going to play it, or I'd probably try it out, but I wasn't expecting to like it, and I'm excited. I'm actually super pumped for that. So, my opinion has changed, and I'm glad it did, because I love Age of Empires, and I'm really excited to see. I want to play a few more rounds this weekend, and if you want to play it, it's on Steam. There's a stress test available. It's free to everyone as long as you have Steam. It's not even through Microsoft. So check it out. I had a lot of fun. If you like those old games, it was great. Okay, so my last thing I'm going to talk about here, story-wise, is what I'm playing right now. And wouldn't you believe it, I am playing Mass Effect again. If you've seen my social media, you'll know this. And if you checked out my stream, I talked a bit about it on Saturday. And so what happened is, so I've never played Mass Effect before the Legendary Edition came out back in March, I think. And when those games came out, I was a 360 guy, but I was a Madden, NCAA football, Call of Duty guy. Those were my games, and Halo. I didn't care about RPGs and nerd stuff. I worked at GameStop during this time, by the way. I would have to look at the years that Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 came out. I'm like 99% sure I worked the release of at least one of them, if not two or maybe all three. That was around the time I was in college when those came out. So I'm like pretty sure I even worked these releases and didn't care. Didn't think twice about it. I wasn't really in a headspace. I wasn't mature enough for that game at the time. And so I've heard people say over the years, "Oh yeah, Mass Effect, it's great. You should check it out." And I remember playing the demo for 3. I remember there was a demo where you play the initial part, the invasion, up to when you get on Normandy takeoff, and that's where it got off. Back when they had demos of games, not betas, and I didn't like it. I thought it sucked, because it's not like the best shooter in the world, and that's what I was into, right? So and what's funny is I specifically remember like 4 or 5 years ago seeing a Reddit thread or something about like the romances in Mass Effect and going down that fucking rabbit hole, which was like Oh wow. Like I didn't play games that had that kind of stuff in it. And even then I was like, it's still not really my thing. That's weird. Why are they blue? What's going on there? And then over the last couple years, I had a coworker, the only other guy I work with. I'm a social worker, so I'm in I'm the extreme minority when it comes to the people I work with. And so there's a couple of the ladies play games, most of them don't care. I've tried to talk to them about it. Their gaming is on their phones, right? Which is gaming. But I do have a bud who's in like Mass Effect's his favorite game. So he a year or two ago, or it's probably about 2 years ago, was like, "Hey, have you ever played Mass Effect?" And this is his favorite game. And all I remember is being like, "Yeah, you like Andromeda, you nerd? Like, oh, cool, it's the worst game I've ever made. Good job. You like Mass Effect? What a crappy franchise." And he's like, "Man," and now he does like Andromeda, so let's not hold that against them. But he he was like, "Man, you really should try it out. You should really play. I think you'd like it." And then not long after that is when they announced the Legendary Edition, last year. And I remember being like, "Okay, like I'll check it out. Oh, it can't hurt anything." The Legendary Edition, I think it was like $40. Whatever. That's fine. I'll check it out. And then it came out, and I beat it in my first playthrough in like 20 hours. I blew through it. I blew through the first game in like 5 hours. I just hit all the main missions and then moved on. And the second game, I'm pretty sure I hit all the main missions. I think I actually did see a guide to do the loyalty missions, or at least enough of them, so that people didn't die. And then I blew through 3 pretty fast too. Like there was like I didn't play the Grissom Academy mission in 3. Like I skipped like whole DLCs. I did do Citadel at the end, which I'm glad I did because it was pretty cool. And like literally, especially in the last third of Mass Effect 3, was like sobbing in this first playthrough. I romanced Liara and then Tally in 2 and 3, Liara in 1, and like in multiple moments, like just like a baby, just sobbing. And I'm like texting him, being like, "Bro, this is like the best game ever made." And then I told him when I played it how I beat the whole series in like 25 hours. And he was like, "Dude, no. Each game should take you like that long." Okay. So I did a second playthrough, 100% everything, 1, 2, and 3. I missed like one random side mission, I think in 3. But did everything. Even in 2, in 1, I even did every planet, collected all the shit. It was awful. And then what I did in that playthrough is I'm pretty sure I did the same romance. Liara, Tally. I'm M-Shep in both of these, Soldier Class in both of them, Earthborn in both of them. If you're a Mass Effect fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Killed Rex, cured the genophage, destroy ending. Not the good one. First playthrough. Second playthrough did the good destroy, where spoilers, Shep lives at the end. And what I did on that playthrough is during the second Mass Effect 2, I did a save towards the end of the game after all the loyalty missions, but before a romance, where I still had time to do a romance. And so I could start subsequent playthroughs from that save, and not have to play through the whole series again. So last week I started the playthrough. So it's literally like a mission before the final missions in 2. And so I did it, and I'm like, I need to do a Liara playthrough. I need to do one where I romance Liara in 1, 2, and 3, because even though I like Tally a lot, Liara seems like she's like the canon romance, right? So I did that, and it was really cool. Her romance, like even though I do prefer Tally because I feel like she has so much growth. What's a bummer about Tally is that in 1 you can't romance her, and 2 you get her pretty late in the game. And then in 3, you get her pretty late in the game again. So you can romance her in 2 and 3. And I think they're good romances, especially because your interactions with her in the Citadel DLC in the third game, and in the final push are just so good. What is it? Ash Zora, I think, is the chick's name, who the voice actor is so she's just does it so she has such good delivery on so many lines. But in this third playthrough, Liara is really good too. It's you can tell. I mean, that's obviously the one they want you to pick, right? Like that's the one that it's the most fulfilling, even though you don't really get to fulfill it in two. You do get the Shadow Broker DLC, which if you do it, you get most of what you would want from that. And then in three, it's just, I mean, I played every mission with her in three, and it was really cool. And I still don't think it was quite as emotional. I don't know. It's tough. Like the last line that you say to her, Tally, I think the one with Tally is much more emotional. It hits a lot harder, but the one with Liara is great. The thing with Liara is that there's moments leading up to that final push of the game that are just really cool and really just beautiful. And they did so, and considering how old this game is, it's really cool that it's still it still holds so much feeling and impact. So I played through it again, hit my third playthrough, annoyed everyone on Twitter with it, and now I'm in the middle of a fourth playthrough. I'm starting at 1, so I'm using a because that starting from 2 in that third playthrough, it just didn't feel good. Like it was fun and I was invested and it was emotional. It was exciting. It was fun to play it. But I really think you like kind of have to play through all 3 games to really get into that world, to remember the details. This time in this fourth playthrough, which is my third playthrough of 1, I am skipping some of the side stuff because I found like a guide that tells you all the important side missions that you need to do for the 2 and 3 to be impacted. But I am like cheating a little bit. But it is cool that if you dive deeper in the conversations, which I didn't in my first 2 playthroughs of 1, you pick up a bunch of stuff that now that I more thoroughly played 2 and 3 times now, I'm picking up on a lot of stuff that's really cool. They did so many throwbacks in 2 and 3 that I didn't realize until playing it again. It's just such a great game. If you haven't played it, I really think you should. The biggest issue is that to really experience it the right way, you have to be able to invest a lot of time into it. I think the first game should take you at least 15 hours or 20. The second game, it's probably, all 3 of them are probably about the same. And I think the second one should probably take you even longer if you really flush it out. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it every time. I mean, there's a reason I have like 6 games I love right now that I want to finish, and I'm not touching them because I'm playing through Mass Effect again. So, just hear me out. I think it's worth it. You should check it out. This time I am going to try this fourth playthrough a lot different. I'm not doing a soldier class. I'm doing the infiltrator class, which is like a tech class. I'm going to try to save Rex this time because he's died every other time. And the guy who replaces him in 2 and 3, if he dies, Rex, Reeve sucks and he's annoying and I can't stand him. And there's some other things I want to do differently. I've always played like a super duper goody 2 shoes in it, and I still want to play like a Paragon, which is you make more good decisions than bad ones, like kind decisions or morally upstanding decisions. But I want to delve a little bit into the bad side too, because there's a bunch of full shit you can do in that game and be really terrible to people. In romances and stuff, I have no idea what I'm gonna do. If you play, I considered romancing Ashley. I just can't, man. She's the worst. So we'll see what I'm gonna do. I am streaming this playthrough. I streamed a part of it. I'm in Mass Effect 1. I'm gonna try to save the story missions for streams and then do all of the side missions on my own time when I play at night or during the day when the little one's sleeping while I'm watching her. So so I'm playing Mass Effect again, and so get ready for all of those feels coming again, probably over the next couple weeks here. So be patient with me. And that's what I have for that stuff. So I do have a couple listener questions. I've got Master Prime, per usual. Your first question I already answered. Your second question was just kind of a general, like, games as a service, are they a bad or a good thing? I think games as a service, it depends on who you are. It depends on who you are, if they're a bad or a good thing. If you're a publisher, they're amazing because even bad ones make money somehow, and get really good engagement, stuff like that, even if they kind of suck. If you're a dev, I think it's a nightmare, because and if you're a player as well, and here's why. There's two games as a service that I'm associated with, and even loosely, that I think have done it pretty good, and it's Warframe and Destiny. Neither of which games I like. I think they're not my games. They're not my style, right? But they're successful. Warframe not as much, but still very successful. Still alive, even though it should have died. And you could say the same about Destiny. The inherent problem with games as a service, and those two games are good examples for what I'm going to get at here. The inherent problem with games as a service, in my opinion, from being involved in the Division community, from getting to talk to devs pretty extensively about making that game, and here's the big detail, and from hearing the things that they wanted to do with it and couldn't because of the reasons I'm about to talk about. The games as a service, in theory, is a really cool idea. It's putting out a great game that's meant to be played continuously and promising to support that game for years with more content and more things to do. That's what I consider games as a service. It's not putting out. It's not like the Jedi game that came out a couple years ago, where they released it. It was really good, and then they aren't doing anything with it. It's done. The story's over, and they're moving on to the next game, probably a sequel. Where instead of that, which I think that's a fine thing to do as well, Hellblade is a good example of that. The first one, Senua's Sacrifice, that they made this great game, they put it out, and then they were done. They did do a 4K 60 FPS thing for Xbox, but that was a separate deal. So the issue with games as a service is that there still hasn't been a really good one at launch. And I will still hold to this day that the best games as a service at launch is still Division 2. And if you're a Division 2 fan, you might guffaw and say, what? And I'm telling you, I still believe that. It had bugs, had major issues. They had to fix a bunch of shit, and I still think it was the best one. And that's because you could like finish it. And it had a decent like playthrough at the beginning. The problem is that to make a really good games as a service, I think, from conceptualizing the game to releasing it, I think you would need to give a studio 10 years and an unlimited budget. And then you would see a game come out that would meet this ideal that we all hope these games as a service games are going to be. It would release fully featured and have a ton of content, and it would have types of modes in it that would make it replayable endlessly with some variation. And then for years, they would release more content. Now, you could argue that this has been done by like with like WoW and some of the with Phantasy Star or Final Fantasy, some of their games that are in that kind of like MMO category. But like, I mean, we don't have that with Division, right? One thing to think about is that the first time we heard about Division was in 2013. And so let's say they started conceptualizing the Division in 2012. According to me, with 10 years and an unlimited budget, the Division 1 wouldn't come out until next year, until 2022. You know, so I think games as a service could be a good thing in a fantasy world where publishers don't care about money. But because in the real world they do, and they make them put these games out in 3, 4, 5 years at the very most, we're just never going to see a games as a service fully live up to what it should be. And even, you know, you can argue that like Destiny 2 is a games as a service that has like met that, but it took years. It took years and years for them to of dedication. And the one thing to consider about Warframe and Destiny, the two games I gave an example of that do it the best and not perfectly, they're independent developers and they publish themselves. I believe that may have changed with Warframe, or I know they have something with Tencent or something now, or they're like partially owned, but I believe they are both their own publishers, which means they don't have someone standing above them telling them what they can and can't work on. The Division is not in that situation. The Division is is made by Massive with a ton of help from other studios, with Ubisoft as their publisher. And I promise you that if Massive made all of their own decisions, we would probably have something like Destiny 2 with the Division. I have no doubt in my mind. But they aren't in that same position. They don't have that kind of say or power. So instead, we have what the Division 1 and 2 are. Games like Destiny, but games that will never meet that same standard. And it's not because the developers can't do it. I see so much slander on Massive and the devs there. They can make really good games. Like, they've made great games, and the Division 1 and 2 are great. If you see someone saying that they're bad games, those are dumb people. Obviously, it's subjective. I understand that, but it's obviously that definitely people cannot like a game. People have to like Division 1 and 2, but I would find it pretty hard for someone to objectively say that they're bad games. But they weren't given 10 years in an unlimited budget. Division 1, they got like 4 or 5 years, but they still had to cut a ton of shit. And in Division 2, they got 2 years, or I guess 3 years technically. And they had to cut so much stuff. If you think Kinley College, if you think the Pentagon, if you think the Warlords of New York, if you think all of those are the way they were supposed to be, here's a hot take. I don't think Warlords of New York was meant to be for Division 2. I think that was clearly a Division 1 DLC that they just didn't do it for Division 1. They saved it for 2. Now, there may have been other reasons. I'm under the impression that things like some of the environmental stuff with Snowdrop wasn't ready in Division 1 and needed some of the tech they put into the engine on Division 2 to work correctly. But if you think about the story of Warlords of New York, that was absolutely a Division 1 DLC. Come on, like, think about it. The timeline doesn't even make sense for you to play it during Division 2. That's why I'm frustrated that you can't play Warlords and first and then go straight into DC to play the Division 2 story without skipping everything and doing the level 40 thing. So I think games as a service could be really cool in a world that doesn't exist. Instead, we're going to forever get these games that either fail or take years to meet their potential. Or in a franchise like The Division, that one probably never meet their full potential. I think that I still believe that The Division could be Ubisoft's biggest property. And instead, it gets treated like a second-class property by Ubisoft, not by Massive. And it's forever going to be a game where people are like, man, it would have been cool if, despite how great it is, despite how many things it does well, it has so much potential that its potential is for a lot of people always going to outweigh what it actually is. And I think that's a bummer. And I think that's because it's a game as a service. I really wish they could have made the Division franchise a completely different genre, personally. I wish it was a game that just came out and maybe had some DLCs and then we waited for the next one. But, I'm sure a lot of people won't agree, and that's fine. You can let me know in the comments. On some content updates. Oh, and then listener question. Master Prime's second question is, what if Microsoft bought Ubisoft? So that was a rumor at one point, if you didn't know. There were rumors that that Microsoft was going to try to acquire Ubisoft. They could afford it. They could do it. I have no doubt in my mind, especially with all of the issues that Ubisoft is having, like PR-wise. Yves Guillemot, I think that's how you say his name, isn't going to be there forever. And he's probably going to be gone sooner and later, just to retire. He's not a young man. And that would be hell of a payday. He owns that company. It is his company. There's a lot of I don't know the details of who actually exactly owns every single penny of everything, but I mean, he and his brother started Ubisoft. Like, it's his company. So if he sold it, it would be a hilarious amount of money. It would definitely be more than the Bethesda and ZeniMax. You know, and it would add how many studios does Ubisoft have? Like 30 studios. It'd be a big deal if they did it. They won't. There would be a lot of issues with that. I think. I can't even act like the problem with those kind of acquisitions, and we're going to see this with Bethesda and all the ZeniMax studios, is that it's going to take, say Microsoft bought Ubisoft today. We wouldn't see a lot of the impact for that for like 5 years. So it's one of those things where, like, it'd be cool, I guess. The thing that I would actually prefer is I would prefer to find out that, like, Microsoft bought Massive, or Microsoft bought, some of the like individual studios, Redstorm, some of the studios I personally care about, so that then they could work on whatever the hell they want to work on. Now, the downside to that would be that, like, Ubisoft owns the properties they work on. So if Massive and Redstorm got bought by Microsoft, they wouldn't work on Division games anymore, unless they also bought the rights to that game, which, I don't know. Hell, Ubisoft might do it because it seems like they hate the Division franchise, but also love it. I don't know. It's so confusing. So, I mean, it'd be an interesting move. I do, even though I'm an Xbox guy and I like to see them make moves like that, I am one that does, believe it or not, not love the idea of every single, of like Sony and Microsoft owning everything and making, and like splitting the gaming community into, like, to play these games you have to be here, and to play these games you have to be here. Like, I think it's good for each platform to have some exclusives that do draw people to it, but Ubisoft and like EA, I guess, like Activision, are like the last three, like, giant multi-platform studios that make games that are everywhere. And if you took away Ubisoft, I mean, you're getting to the point where there's not very many AAA games being made for multi-platform anymore. And I don't think that's a good thing for gaming in the long run. So while as a little Xbot, I would enjoy it, I guess. And I would hope that maybe Microsoft could steer some of these great franchises into better directions that I love, like Ghost Recon and The Division and even Rainbow Six and some of these other franchises. I don't see it happening, but it's a good question. Some quick content updates here. So I did finally get to upgrade my computer. If you've listened to the last couple episodes, I was asking if anyone knew where to find like a 3060 Ti or a 2080 or something like that. I found a B stock EVGA 2080 Super, and it's great. It is in perfect condition. The price was extremely reasonable. Yeah, not super pumped about buying a two-year-old card for as much as I did, but I did get it cheaper than it was initially priced 2 years ago. So, and it says that they're refurbished. This one looks pristine. So if it's refurbished, I have no idea. It doesn't look like it to me, but if it is, then they've done a great job with it. I love EVGA. That's my favorite computer hardware brand. I have multiple things that are from them. So it's great. It's really nice. It's my computer is like really, really dope. Like 2 years ago, because I have the 2080 Super. I've got the 3070X or 3700X Ryzen 7, 32 gigs of 3600 RAM. 1 gig or a 1 terabyte M.2 NVMe SSD. It's a Samsung 980, I think. I have a dope setup. I can't complain. I have a 4K capture card, a sound card. It's great. So, and that is a lot to thank my patrons for. That money I do reinvest it into the stream, and now I'm on YouTube. I can use this hardware now to stream at 1080p at like a 10,000 bit rate, and I'm even thinking about toying with 1440p streaming. I don't know if I can quite handle that, but I can boost that bit rate a bunch, and it looks great. The replays and stuff, the VODs look awesome. So I thank anyone who's a patron for that. Thank you very much. And then the final bit here is Retro. During the last podcast, left me a really nice message, just saying that he likes my voice and the podcast and stuff. I really love to hear that. So that it's very motivating to get complimented like that. I think I've been doing this so long that I still have a decent number of people who listen in all the places. But I think I've been doing this so long that people, that I know people enjoy the things, and I hear from people every now and then, but I want to hear from you guys. That stuff it's really motivating. It's really motivating to do more streams. When people pop into chat and talk to me for even 10 or 15 minutes, it's fun. That's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm there. It's because I want to chat with people and play games, right? And so it makes me want to stream more. It makes me want to do more podcasts. It makes me want to do videos and things like that, because I know that people are listening and people are watching, and that's why you do it. That's why you're doing this stuff. So again, Retro, thank you so much. That was really kind, and I really appreciate that. And yeah, thank you. And that's the show. So I do stream here on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe and like the videos. For the love of God, like every video if you can. That helps so much. I've been reading about the YouTube algorithm, how that all works. Like if you have creators that you like their videos, it matters a lot to them. It helps a lot. The algorithm weighs those a lot, and so it's very helpful. So please do it. And then ring the bell if you want to be notified when I'm on streaming or I post a new video. Check out my Twitter at Bondiesel or at the EchoCast if you want to check out just my gaming tweets, that second account, and not hear all my dribble on the at Bondiesel account. If you want some EchoCast or Bondiesel merch, check out streamlabs.com/Bondiesel. Please do check out my Extra Life campaign. You can go to extralife.com and search for Bondiesel and find my page on there. I'm at $500. I'd love to hit 1,000 by the end of the year. I'm going to try to start pushing that more because I haven't, and I really want to. I really want to hit that $1,000. So if you can throw a few bucks at it, I would really appreciate it. And that's all I have. So until next time.